Well, hi there, and welcome to this session on how to master tough conversations and have less stress and better outcomes. Now, in this particular video, this particular session, we're going to take a look at the R.E.A.L method and 4 critical questions. So we're not doing everything about tough conversations, so we don't have time. It's not a one-day workshop or an ongoing coaching program. This is an introduction. It's an introduction to the R.E.A.L method, R.E.A.L method of mastering tough conversations, and a part of that is answering 4 critical questions. So we're going to have a look at both of those, but we won't have time to have a look at everything. So one thing I think that's missing from a lot of material on tough conversations, these hard conversations, is what exactly are they? Well, maybe to state the obvious, they're conversations you'd rather not have. And it's because of some reasons, and to start off with, they're going to be stressful. They're likely to be, you think they could be, you fear they could be, stressful, hard work. But it's a lot more than that. If they were only just stressful and hard work, well, that'd be one thing. But no, they're going to be difficult. Confronting. They can be unnerving. They can be upsetting and distressing, agonizing, emotionally draining. The number of times I've had these conversations and you're just wrecked at the end of it. And they can actually be more than that. I'd call them grueling. So just think about them now. Are these the sort of conversations you need to have, you're having, you're going to have soon, your colleagues, friends and colleagues are going to have? Just think about this, and a big yes from you would get us on the right track. If this is what you're talking about, then that's absolutely fantastic. Let's forge ahead. So one of the things is, why are they like this? And I think this is really important. And again, I don't see a lot of this written down, but I've put a bit of time into it for you, so you don't have to think too much about it. But as I'm going through some of these things that make some of these conversations tough, no doubt you'll have your own ideas. Look, I think it's all about them, you, and others. I think you just divide the reasons why they're tough up into those. The very first thing I think is, how will they react? Boy, I'm going to have a tough conversation with someone tomorrow. You might be in that position, and what if they just sort of look away or look around the room or yawn or stare at you or whatever it happens to be? That could be pretty frightening. No one likes someone to get angry or abusive or emotional and cry, and I have had someone cry. I mean, it's unnerving, to say the least. What about after? Some of you might be worried about not having any effect. I'll have the conversation, and I most certainly have dealt with people who come to see me, and they've said, "Oh, I've had the conversation and nothing happened." And being able to help them, of course, is what I'm all about. Maybe they'll hold a grudge. What if they hold a vendetta? And maybe that's going a bit far, but certainly people can hold a grudge. What about you? Maybe you're concerned about your own ability. Will you deliver your message clearly? Will you be too soft? What if I'm too hard? Will I remain calm and unemotional? And will I be able to cope with and manage their behaviour? Because if you can't, or you don't think you can, then boy, who wants to have one of these conversations? And what if you care and you feel bad? No one wants to deliver bad news. I've had to tell somebody, a good friend, someone who was a good worker, I told them that they weren't going to get the acting up position they thought they were going to get. And it's not fun. If you care about people and feel, then you try and put these things off. Who here has put off having a conversation they should really have? No doubt lots of you, because I have too. And what about others? What if they don't support you? That could be up, down, sideways even. If people disapprove of you, doubt your ability. Oh, he had the conversation, but it didn't work, or nothing changed, so is he any good? And maybe they can hold it against you. People do. Now, I've categorize these into them, you, and others, and I think we can just summarize it all by saying that's fear. You are afraid, you have some fear about the way they will react. Then there's doubt comes in. I even know people who have stepped up the ladder to be managers and have to have these conversations, and of course the imposter syndrome creeps in. Oh, I won't be any good, oh, whatever it happens to be. So there's doubt. And then there's a risk. And to me, I just call this the great wall of pain, because it's most certainly is there. We've all been there. You've been there. If you've got a tough conversation coming up, just think about it now. What are you fearful of? What are you doubting? What is the risks that you're concerned about? Now, Kate came to see me, who was a new manager, and for her, it was all about what will others think. She was all concerned about consumed by the risk, and she actually said to me, oh, I hate having these conversations. People will hate me. So she was just all concerned about what other people would think. But to be able to help her, to be able to give us some advice about the fact that it's not just always the risk, but it can be her own ability, and worried about what they will think and the way they will react. So getting people to see the bigger picture is often a start of the process of getting on top of these conversations and mastering them. Now, what I think is interesting or frightening, this is all before. This is actually before the conversation itself. You haven't actually had it now. This is all before. And before, it's the worry, then there's the stress and the time it takes thinking about these. And it's often subconscious. People often don't realise just how much time and energy they're putting into worrying and stressing over these conversations, when you should be doing your own work, when you should be helping others, when you should be maybe learning. And congratulations for listening to this and watching this video, because this is a part of the learning you need to do. Spending your time with family, relaxing, going out, exercising, whatever it happens to be. But all of this time beforehand is spent, as I said, often subconsciously. You don't even realise it until it's way too late. And it affects your mental health, physical health, relationships, and your career. So think about this. How much time and energy are you putting into, consciously and subconsciously as well, putting into thinking about, worrying about the conversations you need to have, or the one that you had last week that went okay, but it could have been a lot better. So our job, and my job, is to help you get rid of all that as much as possible. There'll always be a bit of stress when it comes to having a tough conversation, but we want to get it down to that, don't we? Before, during, and after, to be manageable, to be as small as possible. So what we're after here is a method. If that's the sort of thing that you're after, to get that big pile of worry and stress and time down to something manageable and something more acceptable, then method is actually what we're after, a method, and that's what you'll get here today. This all started for me when I had a boss, and that's not a picture of him, but he was really a boss. He was confident, he was hardworking, he was tough, and I admit it, there were times I felt him a little scary. But the thing was, he was also what I consider to be unfair. He was giving, I felt, he was giving my team, me and my team, a lot more work than he was giving all the other teams. And I thought that was unreasonable, unfair. So I kept on putting it off, though, having the conversation with him, and you can relate to this, I've got absolutely no doubt. I told myself he'll eventually realise he's just being unfair and he'll magically change his ways. And sadly, or embarrassed now, when I was asked by someone on my team, had I talked to the boss, the answer was, well, I sort of, got around it and moved on, pretended they didn't ask the question. And it wasn't just my boss I had to have this conversation or a conversation with. It was a member of my staff who wasn't performing well, and I had to have a conversation with them. And again, I kept on putting it off. How many of you have conversations you know you should be having, or you think, oh, maybe should I, and you just keep putting it off, and it just goes round and round in your brain? I used to think about this conversation with the boss I had to have as soon as I got up, but also just walking the door at work. When I was at work, I'd often be off thinking about, I should have, there's the boss there. Is this the right time to talk to him? Even when I was out and about, I'd be still in the back of my mind, or people would ask me, how's that conversation? Have you had it? Now, this, when it all came tumbling down in some regard, I was at the Blue Mountains, which is west of Sydney, and I was there with my wife for a beautiful weekend, or what should have been a beautiful weekend. And the sun was shining, and heck, we even had a rainbow. And looking out at the view, it was lovely. And she turned to me and she said this: if all you're doing is thinking about work, we may as well go home. I was shocked by that, and I admit it. I thought, oh my God, I don't know why I thought that, she's going to leave me. I don't know why. We weren't on shaky ground or anything, but I don't know. That's how bad I think I must have been feeling underneath. I was just off somewhere else, distant, thinking about work. So I knew I had to do something. I spoke to him and it went okay, sort of. But I knew I had to do something. I really knew that I was in a bad way. I had to move on, and I went on a journey, a quest, if you like. So I read lots of books, as many as I could, on the topic of assertive communication, being more assertive, speaking up, having those conversations you really need to be having. I went to a lot of workshops, plenty of workshops, and I was always disappointed. And I was disappointed because there was always too much background information, theory, too much fluff, too many strategies which were too general and at times vague and just handy hints. Things like prepare properly. Yeah, I get that. Be assertive. Yeah, sure. Be clear. Don't let them interrupt. But that's nice. Nothing wrong with that information. But I'm into practical stuff that you can use immediately. No method to apply to different circumstances, and case studies which are irrelevant. Have you ever had case studies which are fine, you work on them, but really they're not relevant? And old-fashioned role plays, when you get to pairs and groups and you're A and I'm B and we read stuff out and I go, this is nothing like the real world that I experience. And although we can all enjoy role plays, they can be a bit of fun, they can be entertaining, but really they're so far removed from the real world environment, they can often become useless. So I went on my journey and I continued dealing with all sorts of people, having the tough conversations I needed to have with all types over all sorts of issues. And at one stage I wrote down 78 types of tough conversations. I mean, you could do this, have to speak to someone about this, they haven't got a job, they missed out on the opportunity, I'm unhappy with their language at the staff meeting, whatever it happens to be. But that was just too many, so I put them into 5 types, and I've got 5 types for it. I wrote what I call personal conversation formulas. These are what to say in certain circumstances, in what order, and then being quiet, because you've said what needs to be said. So I wrote lots of these for all sorts of people, including myself, of course. I wrote 8 essential vocal communication skills, and we won't be looking at those today, but we will another time. I wrote 11 essential visual communication skills. When you are having these tough conversations, what should you be doing? How should you be looking? On what different angles, back, forward? We know some of the basic stuff, not to cross our arms, but what about how we direct people to things, and how do we use our hands, if we use them at all? So, write this down. I eventually needed more. I needed a method that I could use to help other people master tough conversations. And this is what I came up with. R.E.A.L. Please take note of this. R stands for reveal answers, and that's what we will look at today. What are the 4 critical questions you really should get on top of before you have these conversations? Establish the words you're going to use, amplify the impact, that's with the vocal code as well as the visual code of communication, and lifting your skills. So 4 critical questions. Establish the words with my personal conversation formulas, amplify the impact, and then lift skills with what I call agent provocateur role plays. These are advanced types of behavior rehearsal techniques which simulate the real world environment as closely as possible, so you get maximum benefit. But look, when I first had this conversation with my boss, no plan, no method, no structure, no blueprint, and look, quite frankly, I was just winging it, and I know that's often the way that we feel. I think sometimes before I had the method, I think a lot of my successes were more due to good luck than anything else. That's just being honest. So how many of you have felt like it went well, but you're not sure why it went well or why sometimes a conversation has gone off the rails? I'm sure plenty of you. Just before we go any further, I'm a believer in real life scenarios. I'm not going to give you my case studies, although I will give you some case studies because it's necessary. But when you're looking at what I'm talking about, think about your own situation. Maybe you have a conversation coming up, or you know that you or your colleagues will be having these conversations coming up. So think about these in terms of what I call real life scenarios. This is your situation, not mine, your situation. So when people work with me, I don't bring out case study after case study. Examples, yes. But what we do is we work on your real life scenarios. That's the warts and all stories from the workplace. Your stories are the most important thing in this. So let's have a little bit of a look, because that's what we're doing today. Just a quick overview of the R.E.A.L method and 4 critical questions, because these are often overlooked and I don't see them written down elsewhere, but I think these are fundamental. Get these right and you are really home and hosed. Now, I want to make it clear, this is a layering effect. You don't, every time you have a tough conversation, have to start with, well, you do have to start with the reveal answers, but you don't have to go, now I've got to go on to these other things. This is a method you can learn to master them, and once you've mastered them, bang, boom, 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 you'll have no trouble. But reveal answer, what are we talking about? Well, first thing is what's happened and what's the issue. Now, this sounds pretty basic, doesn't it? But I have a lot of people who come to see me and they're not clear about what actually happened and what the issue is or what the problem is. So always use facts and only use facts. I've got and there for some reason. These are clear and objective statements of what was said, done, agreed, or decided. And I like to talk about this as being what the camera saw, not your conjecture and intuition. Now, I've worked on both sides of the fence here. I've worked for an organisation helping people when they are in trouble at work. But I've also been on the other fence when I've actually taken people right through disciplinary procedure. That's not pleasant, by the way. But the one thing that I've noticed where people come unstuck is when they start using conjecture, their intuition, and what they think, as opposed to just simply what the camera saw. So these are the sorts of things which are not facts, and I hear these way too often. This is from my real experiences. You were rude, and I've also heard people say belligerent, arrogant, racist, abrupt. Peter's not a team player. Now, I want to make clear, maybe this is true, but these are not facts. This is the way we interpret it. Our language is rich, as all languages are, and we have terminology that we can use. Sometimes you're overconfident. I actually heard someone use that term. Sam's a know-all. Your report is a mess. He's just lazy. He's a micromanager. He's a narcissist. Now, I'm well aware that micromanagers exist. I'm also aware that lazy managers exist. But while these might be true, they're not helpful terms to use in a tough conversation. See, they might be true, but they create problems for you because they're subjective. They're unclear. They invite the other person to question, to ask for clarification, disagree, debate, and argue. I'm not a micromanager. Who said that? Why do you think that? And you get into this, broiled in this conversation. And it's not that they're not, but this sorts of terminology can get people's back up, or they take the opportunity to discuss with you, what do you mean? Oh, that's not micromanaging. And let's remember, one person's micromanagement is another person's fair and reasonable assertive management. So I think it's best to stay away from those things. These are just ideas to get the ball rolling. So apply it to your own real life scenario, your own situation. At the staff meeting today, when I was introducing the guest speaker, I heard you say, what you might want to say is, today at the staff meeting, you were so rude, Peter. Well, it might be true, but it's not helpful. So there's some other just examples of how you might change language. And once you change your language, a lot of things change. People start to listen to you, you seem more professional, and you're more likely to get the result you're really after. So changing it is important, and just stick to the facts. Now, if you want to know more about that, please, plenty of opportunities. Contact me. Those with work with me, we work through this. Sometimes sometimes the biggest issue is getting them to say clearly, oh, they're just always late. Well, they're probably not always late, but they were late last week when they came in at 8:35, and they're supposed to be work at 8 o'clock, whatever it happens to be. So what exactly do you want the person to do? Now, another major problem I deal with all the time, and people say, I just wanted to get it off my chest. I need to tell them they're not doing it right. I wanted to know how I feel. Now, this is fine. If you want to tell someone how you feel, fine. But just be warned. You know? In these conversations, when you say these sorts of things, someone can go away and go, oh, what happened in the conversation? Oh, they told me how they feel, you know. And for some people, that's just water off a duck's back. They don't care. So be very clear about exactly what you want the person to do. You might actually have to tell them. Do not assume just because you've said someone that their report isn't up to standard that they'll go away and just rewrite it or even do better next time. See, there's a hierarchy of intended outcomes when you have a tough conversation. You want the person to attend, you want them to be polite, you want them to listen. Of course you do. But let's just remember, all that really gives us is that the conversation runs smoothly. That's all it means. It's nice. You want the conversation to run smoothly, but you want more than that. You might want them to understand why you're saying what you're saying. You might even want them to agree that their report isn't up to standard. You might want to agree to the decision that's been made. And that's good. But that makes you feel good. It can even make them feel good that the conversation not just runs smoothly, but, oh, they agreed with me. Yeah, they agreed that what they said at the staff meeting was racist. But you actually want them to do something specific. And I say specific because it's not just they want, fix the report, do better, tidy up your room. Sometimes these are fine things to say, but on the whole, you need to be very clear, at least in your own mind, about exactly what you want the person to do. Maybe it's to make a decision and then, of course, follow through. Making decisions fine, but you want them to actually act on it. You want them to behave in a certain way. From now on, I want you to refrain from using that language at staff meetings and any part of work at all. You might want them to do something. Provide an answer to a question, agree to a plan of action, and then implement it. Be ready to start work at a certain time. I have to deal with somebody in my own work experience who happily came to work and then would sign on and then would make a cup of tea, read the newspaper, whatever. So you might want someone to be at work at a certain time, but if you want them to be ready to start work and actually doing work at a certain time, you need to be very clear. Helen was a delightful human being, is a delightful human being. She was a head teacher. She had 18 staff, and one out of the 18 wasn't playing ball. She told me things like this. She says one thing, does another, then she lies. Like the time she told me she'd finished the reports and went home for the weekend, but she hadn't finished them. She was only halfway through. She's taking all my time. So Helen's issue with the report thing was that the person had said they'd done the reports. Helen was going to look at those over the weekend and get them all finalised or approved, whatever she had to do. And she couldn't do this person's reports. And it wasn't the first time she told stuff like that. And yes, as I said right at the beginning, this is all the time and stress that sometimes these things people can take. So, but of course, conversations aren't always about someone's behaviour. They can sometimes be about giving bad news. Now, what I've done for you, one of the other questions is, which of the 5 types of tough conversations will you be having? And what I've done for you is I've put them into groups, and this makes it a lot easier when it comes to working out how to approach them. Now, I call it the tough conversation matrix. I'm not expecting you right now to read all of those examples, but these are just off the top of my head. They're from my world, maybe not from yours. Sometimes we want cooperation, and I've dealt with people whose behaviour is poor, and I wanted cooperation. What I didn't want to is bawl them out for whatever they'd done. But sometimes you do. Sometimes it's all about their conduct. And just that second one there, telling a colleague what they said or did wasn't acceptable. That's it's about someone's conduct, and the way you approach that is different to the way you'd approach it if it was cooperation you're after. Compassion. I've had to do the very first one there. I've had to tell a friend, someone at work, despite their good work, they no longer had a job because that was the way the budget went. Their contract had finished. They were thinking, because of their good work, they would be extended. And it wasn't very nice, but it's about compassion. Confession. I'll leave this last two. I'll just go over those quickly. And challenge. Oh, no, I'll say something about challenge. I deal with a lot of executive assistants and people in those positions who often are in the position where those above them expect them to do more than what they should be doing. And they're very reluctant to say, no, I won't stay, I can't stay back today and do that work for you, or whatever it happens to be. So those are 5 types of tough conversations. I call it the matrix. And the reason being is because for each one of those, I have what I call a personal conversation formula you can use as a starting base. You've got your own way of saying things, but this has helped me and other people time after time. It helped Kate when the person who was preoccupied with how other people would feel about her if she had these conversations. It helped Helen because she often wasn't particularly clear about what she wanted the person on our staff who was misbehaving to do. So giving the formula like this is incredibly helpful, and it's really at the very heart of the R.E.A.L method. And the last one for reveal answers is why you. This might sound a bit strange to some people. Well, why me? Because I'm the manager. But just because you're the manager doesn't always mean that you should have a tough conversation with somebody. I'm not suggesting you should sweep things under the carpet, but if you think about why you, because I'm the manager, because it's in my contract, because it's a rule, because I'm a parent, because I think it's the right thing to do to tell my neighbour that they're littering in the street or whatever it happens to be. So just think about why you. So there's 4 questions there. What happened and what's the issue? Really be clear about that, because some people go into these conversations because they just have a gut feeling that something's not right. No, be clear. What exactly do you want the person to do? Which of the 5 types of tough conversations will you be having? And why you? Thinking about why you, all of those 4 questions together give you a rationale. If you've ever questioned about Why did you have this conversation? Why did you speak to them like that? Having clear answers to those four questions puts you on a very steady path. And it's because clarity creates change. Learning the R.E.A.L. method, and as I said before, if you've got a conversation coming up, bang, think about those four questions, what you're going to say, and then we can develop further those skills by amplifying the impact and lifting the skills. So you don't always have to go through each stage. It's about a method you can use to becoming from competent, just becoming competent, but you become confident. You become comfortable with them, and I think you become in control. And clarity about those four questions, the method itself, how to use your vocal code of communication, how to use the visual code of communication as well, puts you into control. What I've done here is just introduce you to the R.E.A.L. method of mastering tough conversations. Revealing the answers to four critical questions, you should always, I think, have those on your mind, because I've seen so many people come a cropper at tough conversation meetings when they've been having them, when they haven't been clear about exactly their answers. Choosing a personal conversation for them, just getting better by your vocal skills and visual skills. And there's another set of skills in there which I haven't mentioned yet because I didn't want to overcomplicate this, is about your organisation skills, about the conditions and environment under which you'll have this conversation, and getting better with agent provocateur role plays, and it's a bigger cousin, real life rehearsals. So you get really, really good at this. Now, I'm a speaker, I'm an educator trainer, a coach, a mentor. I'm not much of a salesperson, but this is how I support you. For those that want to know, I produce videos for people. This one, for example, manuals, 1 pages as I call them, get a summary on 1 page is good. I tailor make programs. I don't just always have, I do have some things which I can have off the shelf people want, but I do follow up. So quick help. Sometimes people just want a quick help. I've got a conversation in 3 days' time. Just help me. You don't have time to develop all your vocal skills and your visual communication skills, but there's plenty we can do. I make some pre-recorded programs, crash courses I like to call them, just a straight down 2-hour, 3-hour, 4-hour course. Presentations be helpful sometimes. I've known plenty of managers who have been helped by just a quick presentation on this topic. Yes, I definitely run workshops, and I have coaching programs which can go over days and even weeks. So if anyone ever wants to chat with me, and look, I don't know what you need. I don't know what sort of program you might want. That would be irresponsible of me to say, oh, you should have this course for your program without talking to you. So the best way is always to have a chat with me. Go to my Calendly link, my online calendar. Look, another way of doing it, of course, is just via LinkedIn. And the reason why I like LinkedIn for communication is because there's a good record there. We know who we're talking to. It's not just an email out of the blue. You can check out people's profiles. So 2 ways of contacting me. My online calendar, Mark McPherson, and the other way is through LinkedIn, Mark McPherson 1. Look, I have no doubt plenty of you got questions, so a bit hard to ask them when you're having this video. But if you've got questions, please just let's have a chat. I'm happy to answer your questions for you, or send me a message, even if it's just want to get something off your chest about a tough conversation you've had. Any questions at all about what I do, the R.E.A.L. method. You might have questions even just about those 4 questions that we talked about, let alone the rest of what's involved. So all the very best. We've covered pretty quickly R.E.A.L. As I said, all we've done here is we've looked at R in a little bit of depth, but we've really stayed away from the rest because it's a short video, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But there are other videos now in this series which I'm putting together. So all the very best wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Look after yourself, look after your friends and family, and I hope to chat to you soon. So all the very best.